How are Agilists faring in the pandemic? How are we finding meaning and purpose in these troubled times? How can we connect, inspire, and support each other? We will explore answers to these questions and more. This is Agile Caravanserai. I'm Sanjeev Augustine. Arie van Bennekum is one of the 17 Agile Manifesto authors and the one with the unique distinction of not being from North America. When the manifesto was written in 2001, Arie was there representing the DSDM Consortium that is based in the UK. DSDM, or the Dynamic System Development Method, was developed in the early 1990s as a consortium of expert and industry representatives. And they were from companies such as British Airways, American Express, Oracle, and Logica. Arie himself had been seeking and consciously working in a different way since 1994, and he wanted to change bureaucracy and improve the delivery of business value. Arie is a pragmatic who embeds this pragmatism in structure, discipline, and common sense. He's done this from his very early days in the healthcare and the military forces right up to where he is today. Arie also has a strong message when it comes to personal change. In his book, You Are the Architect of Your Own Life, Arie advocates for overcoming resistance to change by understanding and realizing that change starts with one person, ourselves. So his message is to take responsibility and do it yourself, because you really can't change anyone else. Today, Arie consults globally, helping his clients all over the world, and he embeds his pragmatism in his consulting style and approach, always anchored towards business value. Arie van Bennekum. And I really appreciate you being here.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. So we have a few questions. Let's get started. The first one.
Sure.
One of the authors, the 17 authors of the Agile Manifesto, and we're coming up on 20 years of the Agile Manifesto, and it's sort of a moment of inflection. You also have the unique distinction of being, I think you and I were just talking about this, the only author of the manifesto who's not based in the USA, right? So what are your reflections?
Yeah, my knowledge it is, yeah.
Yeah. So please tell us, reflections on the last 20 years.
I remember, I don't know if you have the same thing, but you have those things, that happen somewhere in your life, and you can memorize them every single second and every single detail, right? And that moment of writing the manifesto was, of course, one, but I started to change very consciously in a different way in 1994. I made that choice because I didn't want to waste that kind of money with the way it was going on in the waterfall processes and the way people were not taking responsibility. And that moment of the manifesto was getting together, and although we were all doing different things or in a different way, we held those similarities, and that's what's reflected by the manifesto. When I look to the Agile movement, because that's your question, right? What about the Agile movement? When I reflect on it, sometimes I'm flabbergasted. When I sit back and I think, what happened here? It's like, I don't know. The way I am structured myself is that when I see things that I don't like, I either change them or I accept them. Or I move. I can't move mountains, so I go away. I go to another place, and from that perspective, I started changing things, and I saw the success on my side. With teams working, not always easy. So to share that kind of knowledge was for me a logical step. Meeting people who were doing maybe in a different way, but trying to achieve the same thing was extremely cool, man. So good to have this. And then in the years shortly after writing the manifesto, you have business as usual. You have to know that I came home that weekend writing the manifesto. It was Valentine's weekend, eh? Uh-huh. And I came home, and not only we wrote the manifesto, but my house had been on fire, and my wife decided to leave me. So if you want to talk about a life-changing event, right?
You got three of them.
Yeah, and I remember 3 years later, in where I was working in Northwestern Europe, extreme programming really became hot. So you started, because I'm an agnostic, I always want to learn from other people's learnings. I have no ambition to be dogmatic at stuff. I have no ambition, to reinvent the wheel. I listen for lessons learned. I listen to understand. And I started adopting the extreme programming practices, and I loved it until today, right? I apply them wherever I can. And then later on, Scrum became very dominant in the market, 2005, 6, I think, at least in the market where I was active. And more it became visible also in the world. For me, at that moment in time, it felt as a sort of a logical thing, because technology, the pace of innovation, more it goes up, it will never go down, by the way. So that thing that we said in the 90s, okay, you have to be able to respond, short cycle delivery, because blah 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 blah. We know and it was more and more obvious, in the world, and technology was not just limited, to a couple of guys writing some code in a corner of a building, but it's sort of sinking into society. If you see, I made my change in 1994. You write the manifesto in 2001. In 1994, there was no internet. In 2001, it was this big, and now it was exploding, and it's dominating every single thing you do. And even, let's say, the last 10, 15 years, that same technology is doing two things. It's disrupting business models in a very fast way. So organizations have to understand this and be prepared to shift business models very fast. So that's one. And the other thing is that same technology is facilitating competition from what I sometimes think that in specific branches, competition is coming from Mars or Venus, because you don't know where they are, right? No clue. Yeah. And that makes, whether you call it agile or not, I don't even care. But that corporate capability to handle change in a very high quality way, to be able to bring that in a very fast way, very high quality to the market, is so important. You cannot allow yourself to deliver the wrong stuff. You cannot allow yourself to be inefficient in the way you work. You cannot allow to have a lot of bugs because people swipe left and you're out, right? So you have to do something. And I think that fact, together with a lot of people that are done with traditional ways of being managed and controlled, we read books, we are self-aware, and I'm not into mindfulness or those kind of things, but people have different priorities, and you can see that happening. 15 years ago, everybody was focusing on, making career and doing this, and a lot of people have a different focus in the world. And I think that being able of, self-organizing teams, deciding yourself, you have a higher education, that's also facilitated by the agile practices that we have and the agile thoughts. And I can see that manifesto is facilitating that as well. So we have it's serving people in multiple ways, businesses, non-profit, individual people, on how to work and what to do. Yep, so I see that with the logical thing.
Yeah. So if I may sum it up, I heard you say that the manifesto, the writing of the manifesto was bringing together a lot of kindred spirits who really felt the same way about changing things and doing things differently. And you're looking forward to that as well. The windows of opportunity have continued to narrow, and Agile is just a way of doing that. Now, speaking of windows and opportunities and the massive disruption, right now we're in the middle of a massive worldwide disruption with the COVID-19 pandemic. And you talked about kindred spirits and people at the Agile community. My second question to you is, like, personally, how are you doing in the pandemic? And then also I'm interested in your perspective as a sort of a global citizen and somebody who lives outside the US but has a global view as well. So please tell us, how are you doing in the pandemic?
Yeah, it's a weird year. You have to also remember that you have to know, you didn't know, now you do, that I spent the second half of 2019 in China, most of my time, doing a lot of work in Tianjin and in Beijing and in Shanghai. Mm-hmm. And so you have the holiday season like it's at the moment, right? Okay, your plans, you go home. And I kicked off this year by the first week a trip to Bangkok. Then I went to Sweden and Germany. Then I went to South Africa, and I don't know which order again. And I've been to UK, and I've been to South Africa again, to Bangkok again, and then it's March. It was March. My girlfriend is living in Johannesburg, and I traveled to her halfway March. And I talked with her. I said, I have to go home earlier, because if I stay here, I can't go back. And I changed my flight. And the next day, President Ramaphosa here in South Africa said, lockdown Thursday. And I was leaving on Monday, right? So I was like, just in time. We didn't see each other for 4.5 months, right? That's the personal factor of these kind of things. Travel stopped completely. We were in the Netherlands in lockdown, and it's not as strict as in some other countries, but we had a lockdown. You couldn't leave the country. Airports were almost completely closed. So you move into that remote way of working, right? Now I have to say, because people ask me always, how is it difficult in the remote way of working?
You're probably doing it all along.
Well, the point is, as a traveler with clients everywhere doing cross-border transformations, remote working is at least part of what you do, right?
Yeah.
But there is, of course, the difference. Where I am right now in my girlfriend's house, I have a study, I have a desk. It's dark side of not of the moon, but of the house, because there's a big tree in front of my window, and this is my space, 8 to 14 hours a day. And back home, I have a similar place, always the lights on, right? It feels odd. And in the beginning, I was okay with it. What I like about it is that I am able to reach out to people from different places on the world very easily. Normally, you go to a conference, you have a travel day, you spend a day or two, and then you have a travel day back. I had 3 weeks ago, I had on Friday at 6 a.m. a talk on a conference in where was it? In Australia. In the afternoon, I had a talk in Europe, and at 9 p.m. I had a talk in Argentina. I mean, how can you do this? I had a talk in China this summer, easily thousands of people. Right. Tomorrow I have a talk, I expect between 10 and 15,000 people. I mean, that's the thing that you can do remote. So on one hand, it feels good and it feels nice. Also, the carbon dioxide footprint that I have as a person, I reduce that, makes me feel good. But when I walk out, it's somewhere in South Africa at the moment. It's like sunshine, wind in my face. That's the personal part. The work is going on. We do the Coach Academy. It's one of the things that I love to do. We have already done 2. It's an 8-week program where people part-time and specific moments in the day participate. And we take the coaching skills and agnostic agile and facilitation and transformations, and it's lovely to do. So one side is really good, but the other side, as most people, you miss the interaction. Yeah. It's whatever I say, I love my work. I love what I do. Also, what I like now, right? But wouldn't it have been nice to just sit at the table somewhere and have a cup of coffee while we do the talk?
Coffee and a bagel.
Yeah.
Or a croissant. Yeah. So that's wonderful. You're helping us see the positive, but also recognizing that this is a time of isolation and separation. And of course, with the vaccines on the horizon, we're all looking forward to being back as Agilists in particular, because we believe in those interactions and we want to be back in person together. So my last question is, even as you've sort of disrupted your own life and leveraged the opportunities that have arisen, what advice and inspiration do you have for the Agilists, and in particular the young Agilists who are entering our movement, which is of course a global movement? Yeah. So if you're looking forward for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, what advice would you have for them?
I have 2 things. It's on 2 legs. Things will change, things have to change, and we know people don't like change. And my example is always my grandfather, because he lived 150 meters away from me. And when I would drive home at 8 in the evening from work or somewhere, I would just peek into his house. And at the age of 94, he would be behind his computer, sending emails to people across the globe. And I think he called me at least 5 times. hey, Arie, can you come? Because you have to explain me how it works. And then, for example, he didn't know anymore how MS Word worked. And I had to explain him. Mm-hmm. But it never stopped him. Even if he had to learn it again, he would do it again, right? Yeah. That openness to learning. I didn't know this was coming, but I have here this one. Yeah, and especially the title. You're the architect of your own life.
Love it.
What I mean to say with it is, you cannot control what's happening to you. You and I cannot control that COVID came to the globe, but it's up to you or up to me what we do with it.
We can control.
And complaining doesn't help. Yeah, you take your responsibility, right? Complaining doesn't help. Blaming doesn't help. Okay, what can you do? How can I make the best out of it? And that might require change, like we changed into remote working completely, right? Like most of us did. And so that's one part, right? That you're the architect of your own life. Realize this. Don't point at in the Netherlands we have an expression: if you point at someone else, 3 fingers point at yourself, right? So, and there's one thing that I would like to share you in that process of change, because we're not done changing. Changing is a fact, right? No matter how much we like stable situations, that's fake. It doesn't exist. And I had the privilege, I think it was 11 years ago, of sitting at the table with Mr. Kofi Annan. He just retired from being Secretary General of the United Nations, and we had a talk with 4 or 5 people and Mr. Annan at the table. And at the end, I asked him, because I remember at that time there was in Myanmar, there was economic bans and blah, 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 worldwide. And I said, I've back home, I have 2 boys, they're 12 and 16. If they have an opportunity in Myanmar, to help people for the better of the people, knowing that there is an economic ban, what would you say to them? Yeah. And of course, he couldn't just say anything he liked. And I was talking to a political gentleman, right? And he said to me, Arie, tell your boys that change always starts with one person. Mm. And I love that quote. And that it reflects back on your own responsibility, right? Right. Don't point at someone else. Do what you have to do. And then the world is a lot better, right? And don't, if you can, in that process, if you can do it with respect to other people, we're good.
Thank you, Arie, very much. That's a wonderful inspiration close to our talk, and I really appreciate that closing thought. That the book again, if you can show it. Oh, you are the architect of your life.
Yes, you're the architect of your own life. Right. Yeah, you can find it on my website, arievanbennekum.com. And it's not big literature. It's not about Agile. Yeah. It's just a little bit of sort of an autobiography, how I handled my life. So you come home from writing a manifesto, and then your wife said, oh, by the way, I have something to tell to you. First, our house was on fire. Second, there's another message as well. How do you handle it, right? Make the best out of it.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we love, I'm sure everyone out there will love this message as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. And we're looking forward to view the publication. Thank you.